Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another in a series of webinars designed for departments of transportation. I'm Terry Bills. I'm the Transportation Industry Manager at Esri, and today I'm joined by Grace Sammartino, who's an account executive on our transportation team, and by Paul Gears, Koya Brown, and Jeff Eisman, who are all solution engineers on our transportation team. Today's webinar is focused on how GIS can support your project planning and infrastructure investment processes at your DOT. We think this is going to be an increasingly important as we move through this year, and we think that we can show you how GIS can help you rationalize and better orchestrate your entire planning processes. As you'll see, the goal is to be more strategic with investment decisions and how to be a more data-driven organization with respect to infrastructure investments. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that we are recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. Additionally, the slides that are part of this webinar today will be available to you on the GeoNet group, Departments of Transportation, and we'll give you that link at the end of the webinar. So to begin, obviously our transportation planning processes in the US are complex. They involve multiple agencies, and really the goal is be as strategic and as cost effective as possible in terms of the selection of the projects to invest in, as well as other infrastructure investments. And typically our infrastructure plans are a combination of one, new investments, new roadways, new bridges, etc. How much are we going to allocate to maintaining our existing investments, so maintenance, and then third, really the safety and our safety improvement projects. So combinations between those three types of highway related projects really constitute the types of projects that we want to invest in. And ultimately, as we said, there's really sort of two key challenges. One is, how can we really make the most strategic decisions? That is, that we have limited dollars. How do we make sure that they are having the greatest impact on mobility, on safety, on other goals that we want to maximize, optimize in our transportation plans? And secondly, that what that really involves is really effective coordination and multi-agency collaboration. So we have many entities, the Federal Highway Administration, the state DOT, the MPOs, local jurisdictions, among others, that really all need to be able to share and collaborate together to develop effective plans. So we're going to start a little bit with the collaboration, and then what we're going to see are a number of examples in terms of the ways that we can really kind of systematize and orchestrate that planning process. So the first thing that's really required for effective collaboration is that we really need to have access, and we need to be able to bring together a large amount of information, not only within our own organization, but really information from other organizations. So it really is information integration, if you will, that's really a precondition for our ability to make good planning decisions. And then secondly, as we mentioned, it's that ability to share information between different agencies, between the DOT and the state EPA or other agencies, and between the DOT and the MPO, and how can we really share that information, and in turn, sharing that information is really a precondition for the analysis and how we can really help drive consensus around these critical decisions. And then once we have consensus internally, how do we communicate that to the public, and how do we involve the public in really understanding and being able to engage in the type of transportation decisions that we make at the DOT level. So as we mentioned, the first step is really how do we organize, how do we bring the information together, and how do we make that information accessible to everyone who needs it, all of the planners, but really the planners need to bring together information from the asset management systems, from the safety systems, from really across the organization. So we're highlighting here one example. There are many, many others where DOTs have really used the open data portals, if you will, to help organize and make all of that information easily accessible to planners, to anyone who needs access to that information. And a second thing is, all of the asset information. So in this particular case, we're really showing two, what I would call asset information dashboards from the the Colorado Department of Transportation. And so if you take a look on the left-hand side, I can actually take a look. I'm looking at pavement conditions. I can look at everything from IRI, rutting, faulting, cracking, etc., and really drill down into any highway segment, looking at the composition, etc. But I also can do that for any of the other assets that I have, bridges, tunnels, culverts, and etc. And it's a way of organizing and making all of that critical asset information available, because again, that's a critical input to our planning processes. And ultimately, those planning processes, most state DOTs really have a workflow, if you will, that we begin really with project intake, and we move through and we increasingly analyze and we prioritize and we make decisions about how we're going to fund infrastructure investments. And so what we're actually going to show you today are pieces of that workflow that will really help systematize it, so that how do we make it consistent? How do we make it, how do we stop the process from being a bunch of disparate spreadsheets and documents, and how do we organize and how do we orchestrate that into a smooth and transparent workflow that helps us ultimately make better decisions. And then, as I said, the final step is really how do we communicate that? How do we effectively communicate that to the public? And so in this particular case, this is really a great example, the Maryland Department of Transportation hub site, so that actually every major project actually has its own page, if you will, its own site, so that I can drill down, I can understand the project, and in fact, I can even get community comment back about any proposed project. So again, this is, and Maryland has really led the way on public transparency. It's a great example. We have put the link there. You can take a look, but I'd encourage any of you to take a look at this, and really as a great example of that, again, public transparency and really creating a greater understanding and greater goodwill. We as DOTs really spend a tremendous amount of tax dollars, and we want the public to really understand the how and the why and the where of those decisions. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Grace, who's going to sort of go to the next level down and dig into the way that GIS can help support you in your processes. So Grace, over to you.
Thanks, Terry. Can everybody see my screen?
We can.
So as Terry said, hello. First of all, my name is Grace. I'm on Esri's transportation team, and I had the fun job of setting up the demos today and giving some context behind it. And the goal here is to show you a way you can abstract location intelligence and smarter planning from your tool set on ArcGIS. So about 5 minutes, I'm going to set up the demos and make a justification toward the utilization of location technology. Our goals today are that you walk away with 3 key points from this presentation. First, we'll show you a way you can spatially enable your planning and performance data on a centralized and integrated system based on ArcGIS, Esri's location technology software. Next, we're going to demonstrate several ways you can evaluate the decisions you've made in project selection and desired performance outcomes directly on a GIS platform. And then we're going to help you make those smart decisions and analyze and prioritize project info. We're going to help show how you can take that data out of the spreadsheets and filing cabinets to help you align your planning and infrastructure investment goals through modern geoanalytic tools. And you know, we have some experiences to share too. We have some quick lessons learned. We've heard from a lot of transportation planning customers about how complex the entire planning cycle can be, as you can see from these slides of true client examples. And we understand and empathize that these critical infrastructure investment decisions are really disjointed, that there's many stakeholders involved, and it requires a variety of dependencies and different standards and formats from the time you propose a project to the post-approval phase. So we're going to show you some ways you can streamline these workflows. And we'd also like to demonstrate, and why we're here today, that we've developed tools to support the entire end-to-end process through modular configurable apps and analytics to support your complex planning workflows. One thing to note is our software is intended to enhance, not replace your existing systems of records. Like I know Terry brought in your safety systems and asset management platforms. We're here to enhance that today, and you'll see some examples from our solution engineers. But we want to provide you what we call true location intelligence. And this is how. ArcGIS Esri's location software operates as a system of systems where your data is no longer siloed and instead spatially transformed into information you can share and analyze in harmony. This is particularly relevant in that about 80% of all your project planning and performance data involves location. So where some organizations promote standalone software systems, ArcGIS has been developed toward an open standards framework, meaning that the platform can integrate with over 100 data formats and over 100 data standards, including tabular and manual. And as a result, you can tie in infrastructure investment data from external and internal sources, in addition to real-time, and even add historical layers of data to optimize the decisions you make along the planning and performance cycle. What that means for you is that you can create targeted and tailored applications from a plethora of data sources that you can reuse, not recreate in many ways for the specific audience. So we want to really democratize that data into your GIS. As it pertains to this presentation, though, here are the featured apps you're going to see today, and you're in for a treat. The first one is Project Intake app. We're going to demonstrate ways organizations can standardize the way they submit and initiate projects and identify the risk upfront versus in a process downstream where a lot of dollars have already been expended. Through a geoprocessing function, this particular example we're going to share from Massachusetts DOT helped reduce the project initiation time from several months to less than 30 minutes. Next, we're going to show you a project bundling application. We're going to demonstrate a way organizations can leverage your asset management systems to help spatially view their projects on a GIS, on ArcGIS, by location and bundle proposed assets and projects that share a similar location and project type. Next, we're going to show you a portfolio optimization viewer. We're going to show you an example that was adapted from Colorado DOT, which demonstrates how planning divisions can analyze and optimize projects by their combined ranking, score, and limited funding sources. And finally, we're going to show you a series of outreach, engagement, and performance applications. We're going to wrap up the demo through several quick-hitting examples of ways you can engage relevant stakeholders, including the public, on pertinent projects along the entire cycle, followed by some cool viewers and dashboards of your infrastructure investments at the project and asset level. So I hope that provided you a glimpse of what we want to share with you today. And without further ado, let me hand it over to Paul Gears to kick off the demo. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. Let's get my screen up here. There we go. As Grace described, what we're looking at here is a project and intake and screening application that is currently in production at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and a version of it is also in production at Caltrans. I believe we have other DOTs who are looking at this system. This application does three primary things. First of all, it standardizes the whole project intake process by implementing a set of customized workflows for different types of projects. You can see there's we've got existing facility improvements, new facility construction. So each of these is flow that includes some forms, it includes an approval process, several approval processes, several forms that would be different for each of these different kinds of project. The second thing it does is it uses a geoprocessing tool to interrogate a whole list of layers, map layers that have sensitive geographies in them. And these could be as many as you want. There are over 24 here. And as you can see, we got the existing highway projects we're looking at. We've got bridges, culverts, some mass transit layers, environmental justice layers, environmental and wetland layers, things like the FEMA flood hazard. Let's take a look at that. And you can see how that layer is there. Now, whether they're turned on or off, this is going to take my project boundary and compare it to these layers to see if we're going to be intersecting any geographies of concern. The third thing it does is it takes all of that information, the results of the screening, as well as information that it pulls directly from the DOT's linear referencing system, and it plugs it into the appropriate slots and blocks in the forms that are required. So this saves the user from having to re-enter information and, of course, possibly make errors in the course of doing that. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to take on the role of a district planner, and I've got a draft project that I started just for the sake of saving some time. And you can see the workflow steps are on the left here. I'm going to go back to my project description, which I filled out just to save some time here, and it's all basic project information. So all I have to do when I'm finished with each step is click the Save and Next button. Now it's taking me to sketching, where it asks me to draw my project boundary. And I'll draw a simple polygon here. And there's my project boundary. Here I'm doing we're doing a resurfacing here in this intersection of Shaheen and Ironwood, I believe it is. There we are, Shaheen Street, yeah. So this is where it's pulling information from our LRS system to get all of the linear referencing information for the exact streets that are going to be involved in this. It's Main Street and Shaheen. So we'll select those and we click Save and Next. Now we're ready. We've got a project boundary. We're ready to do that screening step I mentioned, and I'm going to go ahead and kick this tool off. Now this tool simulates what in many DOTs is really a process of taking your project proposal and routing it around to different departments where they would do they would gather the information about their particular geographies of concern and fill in their parts of the form and send it back. So you'd have this whole routing flow that could take weeks, maybe even months. And you can see here as it goes through, it checks each layer where it finds an intersection, it calls that out. That's the yellow highlight. And it's also significant where it doesn't find an intersection, because in most cases you also have to report that on the federal and state forms. This will take just a few minutes to run through. So this process, it could, if there were errors, you might have to reroute or return the proposal to a department to fill in materials that or information that got missed. And because this is a programmed workflow, it makes sure that all the steps are followed and that all of the information is collected. It won't let you submit an incomplete form. So as that clicks on, it should be almost done here. We found, let's see, we've got an error. We probably got a layer here that is no longer available. These layers may be your internal information. They could also be pulling from web services from outside agencies. Looking for intersections in farm. But the upshot of this is that the geoprocessing tool takes a process that might take months, and as Grace mentioned, it reduced it in the case of Massachusetts DOT, it reduced it from months to a matter of minutes. This is running a little bit slow today. Let's see if I can close that and go on to the next step. There we go. Okay, so the next step is to fill out my project need form. And here you can see where the information that I entered in the project description, as well as my LRS information, is all plugged into the form. And if I go ahead and submit this for, well, no, I can't submit it yet. I'm going to go back to my geoprocessing. It's got to finish before I can go to the next step. Nuts. But, well, because this is taking too long, what you would see is that in each of these blocks where it was requiring information from the screening step, it would plug that those results that we saw just a moment ago into the appropriate block. So I'm going to submit this for acceptance. And notice here now it will not let me enter an incomplete form, and it'll point out which areas I've missed. See, I need to put all of this information in as well. Now, as I complete each form and move on to other phases, I'm going to close this temporarily for now. What we'll see is that as it reaches an approval stage, it can be programmed to fire off an email to approvers and reviewers. We can look at projects that are ready for review. We see that where the stage that it's in and what review it's waiting for. So we're looking for a PIF review here in this project, and we just click our review button. We can reject, accept, and of course we could have notes on those acceptance and rejections. Close that. I can also, at any point, I can export this to, oh, I don't have rights on that one. But if I go back to my projects, I do have rights to this one. I can export it to a file geodatabase or a CSV file. I can leave comments. It'll have a whole trail of comments, and I can always see an audit trail of where the project has been and what has been, what remains to be done. Now this is and then I can also print it out in various formats, all kinds of different formats with some fairly sophisticated map configuration on there. And then finally, I could submit this for final approval. Now this is a customized app. Although it's built on out-of-the-box configurable technologies, there is a lot of custom code because of peculiarities of the forms and things that Massachusetts uses. But an app similar to this, about probably 80–90% of it could be built on with out-of-the-box configurable technologies, as well as maybe some partner technologies that specialize in forms handling. So I'll leave send it back to you, Grace.
Thanks, Paul. Great job. the essence of a live webinar, right? So Paul just showed you a way that you can standardize and automate a workflow that took really a series of 90 days or more into minutes by bringing in that data sooner than later and identifying the risk up front. Now that you will have that project information, we're going to transition a little downstream just by spatially enabling that data. Koye is now going to show you a way you can bundle those projects by location and assets through the Project Bundler app. Koye?
Thanks, Grace. Hi, I'm Koye, a solution engineer supporting asset management for transportation across all verticals. We're going to take a look at a way to really see how to leverage and enhance an organization's assets ecosystem to create a project portfolio using location technology to build efficiency in order to make smart infrastructure investment decisions. Now, let's take a look at bundling asset needs. This dashboard is showing the results of a spatial analysis that was done to take the needs identified from within ViewWorks and spatially group them. ViewWorks is a strategic partner that has ArcGIS embedded in their core offerings. The goal is to identify locations where multiple jobs or treatments have been identified so that they can be bundled together into larger projects. This is possible without any ETL or other extraction processes because ViewWorks, the grouping analytics, and this dashboard are all built on top of the Esri platform. So on the left here, you have potential projects. This analysis is focused on bridges and pavements, but additional assets or street furniture can be included. On the right, we have the jobs. You see a list of all of the jobs that were identified in ViewWorks. Across the bottom, we have a chart of spending over time by asset type. Let's take a look at a specific group of jobs. Now, as you zoom in on the map, you can see jobs and bundles in this area. Now you can see the cost over time for this specific project, Project 351. Perhaps the pavement project that's in 2020 could be moved to 2021, or the bridge project that's in 2029 could be combined with the projects that are in 2028. We can look at these in context of equity factors too. Using data from the Living Atlas, we can overlay demographic data with our candidate projects. So I'm going to turn on the median household income and show you. So now we can see the median household income. You can see that this project that we're focused on, the median household income is between $12,000 and $47,000. Want to turn that off? Let's say we're interested in commute times. We can see that as well. And for this particular group, the average commute times are lower than the national average. Want to turn that off? Now let's take a look at these jobs with cost over time by project and asset type. So I'm going to select this first project. I'm going to select the bridge cost. So for this particular project, now I can see all of the bridge costs and by the bridge cost over time and by asset type. And I can see the roads cost for these projects over time and by type. So for the results of this analysis, it can be used to build portfolios of projects that meet maintenance needs for assets. We just saw a way to be efficient in the way we select our projects by looking at them geographically. We can see the locations and the sequence of projects. So this really is building a recipe for efficiency and greater cost savings over time. This concludes my demo, but before I go, I'd like you to think about what are some of the rules you would use for grouping projects or needs that should be in a bundle. An example would be an anchor project where pavement is the anchor and all the needs are grouped around pavement jobs. Give it some thought, and I'd like to connect if you are open to the discussion of project needs. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention today. So thank you, and Grace, back to you.
Thanks, Koye. This is one of my favorite viewers that you show. And so Koye just showed a portfolio of applications, bundling projects, but have you ever considered merging it with accessibility and demographics? It's a new and modern way of looking at the equity of your projects. Now I'm going to hand it over back to Paul, and he's going to show you a data-driven approach on how to look at those projects by ranking, scoring, and some of the funds that you have available to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. So this is just one example of a wide array of project viewers. In this case, it's from the Colorado Department of Transportation, and it's a historical viewer of 5 years of past, present, and future projects. It focuses primarily on project funding and project scoring. Here, Colorado DOT has a project score that's a composite of several different category scores, and the high score would be 100. So here we can see all of our projects for all of the years. The size of them tells us a little bit about what their overall project score is. We got some indicators to show the total projects and total dollar value, as well as the average project score. We can see how they're broken down across the districts. We can see how they're broken down by project type, project phase, whether what's under construction, what's completed, what we've passed on, what is still sitting in the bundle of projects that could be funded. So one thing I noticed here, let's take a look at what we already have under construction. We've got 221 projects, almost $3 billion, and the average score is only about 56. That can be a bit of a concern to me, and we can learn a little bit more about that by using other filters here. We could look at individual regions, we could look at individual project types to see where those low scores are coming from. And we can use these nifty sliders, this project score slider. Let's only look at the projects that are below 50. And now we could maybe take a look at what those projects are and get a sense of why they're scoring so low. But the big thing is, I would like to bring that number up. And I've got about $20 million in state highway funds that I need to find some projects that are still in the hopper, waiting to be funded. And I want to pick projects that are going to be representative of the different project types, but I also want to pick projects that have a very high average score. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my project status to passed, and that's not pass, it's things that have been passed on. Here we go. So now we're just seeing the projects that have not been funded yet. I'm going to set my score slider to 75. I don't want anything with a score under 75. Well, that gives me 38 projects at almost $500 million. Let's try, oh, I also need to set my funding type to state highway fund. There we go. And that now we're down to 9 at 99 million. If we reduce the total project funding, we see that gradually we'll start reducing those numbers. We got 6, we got 5, and we got 4 at $15 million. So we're still $5 million short. We could squeeze another project in there. We can look at the projects here in this project list and examine them. But we could also fool around with this project score a little and see if we just reduce this a little bit. I'll bet if we reduced it just enough so we get 5 projects, well, we get 24 million with 6 projects. But you can see how we could zero in on maximizing the portfolio of projects to achieve this very high score. And of course, that would bring up our average score for everything that's under construction. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Grace.
Thanks, Paul. So what Paul just demonstrated is what I would call more of a bird's eye internal and exploratory way for transportation agencies to really affect smart planning. We're going to end this webinar, this demo, the last series, with some what we would call transparency tools. What we're hearing from our general public is, how are our tax dollars being spent? So Jeff Eisman is going to show you a series of applications of how to collaborate and share that information in meaningful ways. So Jeff, I'll hand it over to you.
Hey, Grace, thanks. So we're going to take a look at a few apps today, and it's going to really go from, the state project level all the way down to like the asset level, and as Grace just mentioned, it's about promoting this transparency for the public and communicating what's going on to the public, we want to be able to make that easy. So a lot of times, in the past, there's projects going on, and each project has a different way of communicating it to the public. There could be multiple different ways that gets sent out, or maybe it's just, on a website, there's, a PDF or something to link to. So the first thing we're going to look at right now is, Terry talked about this earlier, the Maryland DOT website, where, it's the project portal, and this is using Hub technology to bring all the projects together into one place and being able to communicate that to the public. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. So, we're in the project portal here, and you start seeing a map of everything that's going on within Maryland, and we're going to sort of revisit that map here in a second. But I just want to look at a few more things. There's some other applications that are available for the public, different transportation related things that a public may need to look at. And it also has a breakdown of the projects by phase. So we can easily, by going to this website, see, where's the, we have total number of projects at 114, 87 of them are in construction right now. So we can keep track of that, and these numbers are maintained in real time. And it gives us some information on future project. If the DOT wants to identify a project as one that is important for the public to know, they can put that on here. It standardizes really the way that people see it as well. And then there's the calendar of events. So if there's some sort of big opening coming soon, that would show up on our calendar as well. And there is also we'll go back to this map. So let's go back, and we can go back to this project portal list as well, but we want to go to the project portal map. All right, so we see this, and let's dig into a little bit. Now, we talked a lot about sharing. How do we share this with? We can actually go in and share this link to, organization's Facebook page, or Twitter account, or something where they want to see what projects are going on. Let's look at a few more things in this map. We're looking at a legend in this map. We see what each thing means. We got the green in there in planning, the blue or purple in design, construction is the orange cone. And if you actually select one of these, you can see more information on that. We're going to dig into this in a little bit, and then we go to a project summary. We can see where all these are, and if we actually expand one of these lists, it gives us where these are, the projects are located in planning and on down. But as a member of the public, I want to know what's going on around me. I want to know what's happening in my area. I pass construction all the time. I want to see what's going on. So I know I live close to this river, and I'm going to go search. So I enter that this road close to my house, and I see that I've got 2 project construction within 5 miles. I can extend that out to say 8 miles. I get a couple more projects, but I know that I pass over this bridge all the time, and I want to see what's going on. So I'm going to select that. So it takes me right to that information. So this is the same information that was in the pop-up, and it gives me a sort of breakdown of it, traffic count, but I want to find more information on that. So I'm actually going to click on it, and it brings me up to the project page. Now, like Terry mentioned earlier, all these have a standard design, but each project page can have the information that's unique to its own page. So for example, this bridge that's close to my house, I can see the overview of it. I can see what's going on. I can see the update of the spring, and I can also follow this. So any new updates that come out, I will be notified of that. It's also got, some pictures of what's been going on in a live traffic feed. So this is great because I pass this all the time. So, this is a way I can keep notified of what's going on in the construction. But I want to go to another site. So how this is a standardized format, but it also has unique data to each project. This is another interchange close by that is set up the same way. But the interesting thing about this is I've got a public survey that I can fill out. And this is, some DOTs use this to solicit some information from the public. What's your highest priority? So let's just take a look at that. This is embedded into the site, and this is on the Esri platform as well. So let's just go, and it asks me to say, okay, what are my top priorities for this site? Reduce congestion is first. Top reduce congestion is probably the first one. Let me move that. And, improve second. So this is where I can just go through this survey and sort of to rate what my top priorities are. Go to the next, what are my biggest concerns? Traffic is always a huge concern. Safety is a huge concern. I'm not worried about the signs because it seems like there's signs everywhere. And the design, I know nothing about design. And accessibility, so we can go along this survey, and this is great because this actually gives the DOT a picture of what the public sees in that intersection, but and keeps them informed as well, because once I finish the survey, I enter an email address, and so anything new that comes out from this intersection, I'm notified as a member of the public. And the rest of it's set up very same as the other site. We have pictures, we have media, and it's just a way that that's communicated to the public. So we're going to take from the sort of state DOT level of projects and move it down to more of the project level. So we talked about earlier a lot of this, being able to identify, the top projects for that need work, or using some criteria to decide which is our top priorities, and to bringing in multiple data sources into one way to make those data-driven decisions, and to be able to communicate that and be transparent about how we're making decisions on what roads we're going to do construction on. So this is a pavement quality dashboard. So we're just looking at road quality. If we go ahead and look at some of this data here, we can see that each one of these roads that are identified for probable construction has a number of data attributes associated with it. Now, I know you're used to seeing, attributes and pop-ups, but each one of these, if we go down the list, is from a different source. We have a speed limit and a speed limit score. We know the lanes, we know the project score, we know if it's a one-way street, we actually know the traffic count. We know if there are any critical infrastructure nearby, which would help us decide that that's probably a high priority for construction. Before I move on though, I want to show how this actually get some of this data in here. And so I'm going to go to a spreadsheet, which everybody is familiar with seeing. And what's great about showing this is, we're able to see this in a tabular way. But if we look at, say, the first entry into this spreadsheet, we see a route ID, which is the road name. And we see, to and from measure. We see speed limit, lanes, all this goes down that these attributes are linked to this section on the road. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we're bringing a lot of data together from different sources. Some of this is tabular data. So how do we bring data together that may not have a unique identifier in the database? It's really done spatially through our linear referencing our roads and highways. We're able to take these entries and link them to a specific segment on the road. So if we go down, we can see that this segment, this small segment of a couple miles, has these attributes associated with it. It has project scores. Here's the traffic count, the safety scores. And once we get to the end of this, we're able to take all these attributes and weight them how, this is a city who decided how they're going to weight that, but this can be set up for any other way you'd want to do that using your business data. But, it's done with a formula. It takes each one of these attributes that maybe from different sources, internally and externally, brings them together to calculate the score. Now, the score is used we're able to put that on a map spatially by linking it to these routes. So let's go back to this map. All right, so we looked at the scoring. Here's the final project score. This is one of our higher scores. But, it's not just able to see it on a map. We want to be able to analyze that and make decisions based on that and be able to communicate it with the public. So as we've seen with a lot of the other demos, a dashboard is a great way to do that. So this is just using that spreadsheet data, linking it to a location and a segment spatially, and identifying maybe the top 14 projects. And if we go over to the side here, we're able to see a lot of those same attributes that were in the spreadsheet here that calculate that score. And like I said, some of these are external and some of them are just tabular data. And so we're able to communicate that to the public, be very transparent in how we're making these decisions, which is important. And this can be configured in any way that the business needs require. So let's take it a little further. Take some of this data that we just looked at. We know that the scoring can identify some of these areas. We can identify places that that maybe there's a cluster of projects that need looked at by using a hotspot analysis. So taking all that data and bringing it together and saying, okay, where in our city should we focus on? And this is a great way to show. I mean, you can definitely see that within this map, you can see that there's a hotspot of roads that need to be looked at. And so, as we look at that, then we can make decisions on where to set up the projects. All right, so now I'm going to drill down a little bit more. Terry mentioned earlier he was showing a lot about the asset dashboards. So we're going to end with this. So we're going from the state DOT level down to the project level, now down to the asset level, and all these things work together on the Esri ecosystem or the Esri platform, and so these can be configured any way that need to be. So we're looking at a CDOT dashboard of guardrails. We're able to see guardrail length. Go ahead and look into region 1, which is the Denver area, and see some of these guardrails. And the main location, we're able to see where these are at based on the road, and it has a specific location. And you can drill down into types. This is all asset level. We look at the different types and keep track of the guardrail length for reporting based on that. And this can be communicated, internally or externally. We're going to switch to culverts. Culvert is another asset level that's important to keep track of. We can take a look at, these based on some regions. So in this region, this maintenance region, these are the assets available or that we're looking at. We see that, we can look at all the poor culverts. And if we even have a definition. So if somebody's coming in here, I was like, I want to know what poor means. So this is what we even break it down here: broken, collapse, full debris, blocked, restricting flow. So that's the definition of poor. So we can pick one of the first ones. It will take us right to that location on the map and see where that crosses. We can look at all the good ones that are rated good and see how these are based on region. So able to drill down using a lot of the asset data and be very transparent and be able to use this to collaborate with other departments as well. And so we're finally going to end up with the bridge condition. So yeah, this looks very, very busy. So, you know, we're in the state of Colorado. We see all the bridges in the state of Colorado. And it's just like the other dashboards. You know, we can look at it by condition. You know, look at all the poor, you know, good. And it changes as we do. It keeps track of, you know, where you're at with this. And let's take a look at one of the regions. You know, this is a little bit north of Denver. You know, see that there's in this region, there's a total number of bridges is 113 with the sufficiency rate of average of 87. You know, 43 good, 63 fair, and 7 poor. So let's take a look at, you know, the first one in our list. See what that looks like. So we know that we see the location, we see the rating, we see the reference point where that's located all along the route. Let's see, I want to go to a different one actually. Let's go ahead and if there's photos available for these bridges, you know, they will show up down here. So we can see, you know, any of the inventory that, you know, has been captured based on that. So again, being able to share this information with others and with other departments is important, and actually to the public to know what's going on with bridges. They can easily search a bridge based on their location and see, you know, what is the rating of that, if you know, that is something that is available to the public. So as we wrap up this section of apps, you know, just be able to remember we went from the state level all the way down to the asset level, and just how to communicate a lot of this project data to the public. And, you know, all this is located in a centralized platform, and everything I showed is out of the box functionality, just with some configuration to sort of match your business needs for that. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Grace to finish up.
Thanks, Jeff. I love that. So Jeff ended the demos with a series of performance transparency application, but the justification we wanted to make as an organization is we can provide you geospatial tools for your entire end-to-end planning cycle to make smart infrastructure investments. So I'd like to close and thank you for listening. If there is something that piqued your interest, please contact our Esri transportation team. We're happy to help. And I'll hand it over back to Terry for Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Grace, and thanks, everyone. That was really impressive. And again, the point is that you really have existing workflows, and we hope that what you've seen is that really the GIS can actually help orchestrate and can help systematize that process. So please, this would be the time, type in your questions into the question box and we'll start answering those questions. So the first one came in and it says, how could we incorporate our priority criteria into one of these applications? So, for example, with Massachusetts, with the original one, while they were evaluating against a variety of environmental and other criteria, could they also then build in prioritize, put their priority criteria and be able to rank or prioritize their projects? So who wants to take that one?
I can speak to to map it. I can imagine where you would take, you know, certainly scoring would be based on the kinds of risks and remediation required for the projects that the screening tool would give you. So that would be something that you'd need to find a way to represent that as a numeric or as a categorical, and then plug it into the kind of formula that Jeff showed in the spreadsheet. It would be something that is so unique to each DOT that you pretty much have to set those standards yourself, and if not code them, then at least use something like formulas, spreadsheet formulas, to arrive at the score. And then once you have the score, you can see how it would be displayed in these various dashboards.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And another question, sort of, if I wanted to know more about one of these particular applications, how could I learn more about any one of these?
Yeah, so I can take that, Terry. You have a national account team support across the country. So depending on who your local rep is, our team, in conjunction with your account management team, can support you. But feel free to reach out to, my name is Grace Sammartino, I'm on Esri's team. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can share my email, and we can get you started.
Okay, great, thanks. And let's see, there's another question that somebody says, well, in our existing processes, we actually have things like project cost information and other information that we have in other systems. Could those be integrated with any of these tools? And maybe I'll go ahead and I'll take that one since I'm familiar. In fact, a number of state DOTs have really done that. In other words, you may have a pre-existing system that really handles your STIP accounting processes and the administrative and the financial components. Any of these sort of solutions that you saw, as well as others, can easily be integrated with some of those pre-existing systems that you may have, and that really is the beauty. There's not a single application that's going to run everything through your entire planning process, but what you want to be able to do is really, how do I put together, how do I really sort of systematize my project planning workflow in ways that I can really bring all that information together at my fingertips in a way that really I have all of that information in a way that I can really make those best decisions. And I do hope that that's one of the messages that you've taken away, is that really part of what we're trying to show is that ability really to bring information together to make your planning processes more data-driven, easier, and more orchestrated and systematized. So, and let me see, I think that's the end of the questions at the moment. So, Grace, you have any final thoughts that you want to add before we close out?
No, I just wanted to thank you all for attending, and then if please request to be contacted so we can further follow up with you, and we look forward to working with you.
Yeah, and I would, there is a little survey that right after the webinar, we'd appreciate if you would fill that out and give us any feedback additionally to that. So we do want to thank you for attending today, and we hope that you'll join us in the future as part of this monthly DOT webinar series. So again, thanks for attending, and we look forward to having you join us in the future. So, all right, thanks, bye-bye.